London, as President Donald Trump toured Asia, 3 U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier battle groups exercised together in the Pacific. It's an awesome display of U.S. military power and reach, a reminder of Washington's unparalleled ability to project global force. At the same time, however, it's also a sign of how stretched those forces have become. Getting 3 carriers to the Pacific has been an intrinsic part of Washington's strategy to intimidate North Korea. But to do so required pulling forces from a host of other potential conflict areas, including the Gulf. The ever-increasing demand for military resources in a growing number of places is causing increased concern in the U.S. military. In June, a report by the U.S. Army War College described America's military clout as fraying and bluntly concluded that the era of U.S. global military primacy that followed the fall of the Berlin Wall was over. America's armed forces have a variety of strategies to tackle that decline, but the truth is that coming wars will look very different from the sort of military deployments taken for granted in the recent past. The change from a decade or so ago could scarcely be starker. In the aftermath of 9/11, America's conventional military capability was narrowly focused on a handful of locations, primarily Iraq and Afghanistan. The resources plowed into them were stupendous, $5.6 trillion so far, academics at Brown University estimated this month. That would imply a cost per individual U.S. taxpayer of more than $23,000, including future care for veterans. Advise and assist, at their height, those wars dominated U.S. military thinking, planning, and workload in a way that is hard to overstate. Working from Pentagon figures, the Brown researchers estimate that some 2.7 million American service personnel passed through those 2 countries in that time, more than half of them deploying more than once. Officially, however, these conflicts were never seen as endless wars. The hope was always that one last surge of troops would win the day and allow a larger withdrawal. That didn't happen, and U.S. military planners now assume there will be a substantial presence in Iraq, Afghanistan, and several other countries for years, if not decades, to come. Since the middle of the Obama administration, however, the Pentagon has quietly and comprehensively changed its approach to those wars, aiming for a much more sustainable advise and assist model working through local forces. Speaking at the Association of the U.S. Army meeting in Washington in October, U.S. Army Chief of Staff General Mark Milley made it clear he expected such missions to grow substantially in the years to come. The success of the US-led coalition against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria demonstrates such tactics can work. But there have also been substantial failures and wastage, not least in Afghanistan, where local security forces continue to struggle despite absorbing $70 billion of U.S. funding since 2001. Much of the burden of U.S. operations in the last 15 years has fallen on a handful of special operations units whose budgets, personnel numbers, and deployments have all risen dramatically. They are now dangerously overstretched, and the U.S. Army is now looking to create more mainstream units to take on unconventional deployments.